Now, I'm pretty sure you shouldn't bring evil when you're preparing a bath. Here's a look at the Numskull design, first edition horror Tubbz. Tubbz is a highly collectible series of your favorite gaming, movie, and TV show and pop culture characters in duck form. Featuring incredibly detailed features, this amazing collectible comes complete in a displayable tub box. Now, I think it's very unlikely that Ernie would be writing any song about these spine-quivering quackers. I mean, obviously, these ones are based more on horror characters. I don't think Ernie necessarily is collecting those. And I'm sure his rubber ducky that he has right now in his collection, his prized possession, would be rather terrified of these other ducks here. Before, of course, we get a closer look at the first edition horror Tubbz, let me go ahead and send out a big thank you to the folks over at Numskull Design. They reached out to me and asked if I would like to have a look at some of their new quackers. And I said, absolutely. Having already looked at ones before, both of the horror variety, and we also had a look at Christmas ones with the Grinch that stole Christmas. Of course, with provided these ones, these are the first edition of rubber duck Tubbz. Each one of them come contained inside of course, a soap dish. Thinking also going back to Ernie, if anyone had remembered seeing the Christmas special, Bert and Ernie. Ernie had, of course, his prized rubber ducky. Bert had his prized paperclip collection. And in that special, dated like the late 70s, they all went to Mr. Hooper looking for a gift to give the other one. Well, unfortunately not having money, Ernie had to give away his prized rubber ducky in exchange for a cigarette box, if memory serves me correctly, that would then hold Bert's paperclip collection. Bert, not having money, ended up having to give away his paperclips in order to get a soap dish for Ernie's rubber ducky. Obviously opening up the gifts that Christmas morning, they realized that they didn't have the gift for that. They didn't have their prized possession for that specific gift the other person got them until Mr. Hooper arrives. And not to spoil anything from the late 70s Christmas special, Mr. Hooper ended up giving them back for their gifts, a rubber ducky and the paperclip collection. The only reason why I even bring this up in the first place, we're not even talking about really Christmas, is that in Halloween, at least, kind of these are more suitable, I feel, for the Halloween season, not necessarily Christmas. But each one of the Tubbz, as you can see, is sitting inside their own designated soap dish. The thing I like about the soap dish is that they all hold them well, really except for Carrie. Carrie's sort of the only exception to that rule. But Carol Ann, for example, Carol Ann sits very nicely inside of her soap dish, and each one of the soap dishes are exactly the same, molded here in black plastic. The only thing that's really different about them is that each one of them are printed with the movie that character is from. So, for example, Carol Ann sits pretty good inside this soap dish. The only one I really had the problem with was really actually Carrie. Carrie we'll kind of get back to in a moment, but the fact that she does actually have her wings spread out like this, she's the only real Tubbz that I've come across so far that you can't have her facing forward. You have to instead turn her sideways. And of course it does have Carrie there printed on the side. Each one of these, by the way, also come included with their dish covering. So like, for example, sticking with one for Carol Ann Freeling, for example, does have the sticker here on the front. She's got the first edition. Now, all of these are going to be the first edition, first Tubbz. And of course, on the back is advertising the other characters that we're going to be looking at from this wave, being that Carrie, Hannibal Lecter, and Carol Ann Freeling. The only other one is the one that got packed along with, for example, Tiffany. Tiffany has also advertised on the side here, Scarred Chucky, which is not one Tubbz I've yet to pick up. And I would really now, the fact that I actually now have Tiffany, would love to really try to track down a Chucky to go along with Tiffany. But all of these simply just, we're going to take this one right here because, again, like we want to make sure it's matching that to Carol Ann. These all snap on top of these. So if you don't necessarily want to have them displayed unhelmeted or undomed, simply just take the dome and snap it on top of it. And actually what you can do too is you can then stack these on top of one another. I don't know if you can actually see this or not, but impressed in the top of it, there's these 4 indentations that, would you then believe, the feet on the bottom of the rubber duck dish fit then into that slot. So you can actually, stack them on one on top of one another. The other earlier horror Tubbz that we've already had a look at here on this channel, I've actually just got displayed on my shelf, sort of like this. Not just, obviously not multiple Hannibal Lecters, but I've all got them sort of, across my shelf like that. But as for Carol Ann, I suppose she is really the less horror-looking character, really, when you then look at them. I guess her and Tiffany kind of look the most normal, and that's not saying too much. Carol Ann, for example, let's just go ahead and pick her up right now. The material that they've used for these is sort of the equivalent of a rubber duck. I would not necessarily advise putting these in water. I mean, rubber ducks as a whole sure are good and meant for water, But the only problem with them is that they retain the water inside, because obviously there has to be a little air hole there to make them, not making the sounds necessarily of a rubber duck this time around, but by trapping the water inside, this is always something that ends up, you can always then feel water swishing around the inside, and eventually that will start to mold. So I don't ever really put these, nor would I really recommend either, putting your horror tubs in water. But Carol Ann, certainly, as you can see, she is wearing her nightgown. It looks like she's also pointing towards the TV. They're here, Carol Ann. I love that woman, Carol Ann. She does have her long locks of blonde. Of course, you can see she's got a little reflection also in the little corners of her eyes as well. I mean, this was obviously the most harmless, I would feel, of the other three that we're going to be looking at here. But all in all, like, it's a good looking, like, it's a regular duck, but it's essentially cosplaying as a character. And I think as a Carol Ann, maybe you may look at this and not necessarily identify right away who the character is. I would honestly feel like with the other three, you would look at them and know exactly what character, and also probably even what movie they're from. Carol Ann, you might draw maybe a more of a blank to, unless you're really familiar with Poltergeist. I'm a big fan of Poltergeist myself. So that's Carol Ann. We're going to put her right there. We're actually just going to move her over just a little bit. Let's then move on to Hannibal Lecter. Hannibal Lecter, I really think, is a fun duck, because obviously this one is covering over his bill with his mask. This time around, instead of actually biting somebody's skin, I'm sure he would just be pecking away at somebody's flesh. They've taken the time to actually cover over his face. And that's one thing also, too, with this one. By the fact they've covered over his face with his mask, you can then identify right away who the character is. Really, without that, yeah, it would have been just gray hair and it would have had just a duck bill on the front. Maybe the trench coat also would have been a big dead giveaway. But this one was also sitting inside of a tray that says The Silence of the Lambs. Now we're going to go ahead and pick that one up. And again, looking at, looking at Hannibal Lecter, I think he's done well. He's obviously got the trench coat there wrapped around his body, and he's also wearing underneath that his actual prison gear. So it's not just simply just a case that they're giving him a duck body and then wrapping the straight jacket around it. There's no articulation on any of these. The whole purpose of these is the fact that they're just like fun collectibles that you can put on the shelf. I do, again, like the coloring handled here. It does, in a way, sort of look like Anthony Hopkins. I guess if Anthony Hopkins was actually a rubber duck, which essentially he is right here. Let's go ahead and put Hannibal Lecter to the side. I really want to leave Carrie for the last, because I think she's kind of the most interesting. Picking up now Tiffany. Tiffany, again, comes included with a soap dish that has Chucky there on the front. And Tiffany, again, I really like the coloring that they've used here. It's still a cosplaying duck, but now she's got like lipstick there on the front. You can actually see, in fact, she's got a little tongue on the inside of there. It looks like she's also using eyeliner. I mean, I know so little when it comes to makeup. And of course, she's got the long blonde hair. I really like the touches of also adding the bride dress. She's also got the little tattoo there also as well. The necklace too, and she's also got the leather jacket. So like, again, all the boxes are checked. She even has herself, what is that called? I'm drawing a blank now. It's going to come to me a little bit later. Garter belt. Little garter belt on the back of her tail. I think that's also a little fun touch there as well. I'm now seeing how good Tiffany turned out. Not that I was already not interested to get the scarred Chucky, but definitely now I'd be really interested to get the scarred Chucky to go along with Tiffany. The last of them, obviously, we just kind of now move everyone out of the way, is the Carrie. Now, Carrie, I've already mentioned the fact that she can't really sit forward. Just because, again, like the wings are, they're designed that you have to have her turn slightly sideways. I wonder why they decided to go that route. I don't know if necessarily having the wings out has anything really to do with Carrie. I know, obviously, she gets bathed, but not necessarily bathed with water. She gets bathed with pig blood, and maybe that's one of the reasons why they want to have the wings fanned out. I like that she's got herself the little, again, now I'm drawing a blank as to what that is. The little flower corsage wrapped around the one wing there. And that's a nice little touch. She's got, of course, her prom dress. She is covered in blood. I'm sure nothing really has yet to happen to everybody. I really actually got to be careful. I'm looking around it, see if the lights are flickering around. Okay, no, the lights aren't flickering. But I really like this one. This one, I think of all the four that was provided from Numskull, this one might be my favorite just because, again, like she's just showered in blood. The blood is covered all over her face, all around the back of her hair, and covering her poor dress that she spent so much time to get dressed in. Of course, all on undersides of all of these, you still have yet the air hole, and there's also the Carrie there presented as well, and Numskull design off to the far side. Each one of these also, I'm just looking at these, all seem to have, again, like the first edition, first Tubbz stamping on all these as well. Price point for these, will vary. I think on average they're probably like $14 to $20 within that field. So I don't think they're super expensive. This is sort of a niche. I know it's a niche collectible. Not everybody who's even into horror may be on par to get these collected in their shelf space. But yeah, if you're a big fan of like horror films, and not even just even horror films too, like Numskull's been churning out some really fun cosplaying ducks across really a lot of genres, superheroes, sci-fi, and of course now that we're getting stuff with horror. The horror is my bread and butter really when it comes to collecting. I really like the look of these. I mean, they're obviously not going to be everyone's cup of tea, but if you are a fan of rubber ducks, cosplaying, and horror films, why not pick these up for yourself? Big thank you once again to the folks over at Numskull Design that did provide the samples of the horror Tubbz, specifically the first edition horror Tubbz that we had the chance to have a look in this review. Have you guys been collecting any of the cosplaying ducks from Numskull? If you have, let me know down below in the comment section which ones you have, or if you'd be interested to collect this line for yourself. Also as well, if you guys enjoyed this video, I want to hit with a like. If you guys are loving the content you guys are seeing, and you certainly would like to stick around for more, if you haven't already done so, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, and you're also as well turning on the bell notification. Of course, as always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.